Today's episode of How About We Animate That is brought to you by the Lego Animation book, written by some very cool people. Go to setbump.com/book to order a copy of your very own.
How about we animate that?
Hi, and welcome to How About We Animate That, the series where I, David Pagano, attempt to animate anything and everything using stop-motion animation. I made a mistake in choosing my shirt color today because today I'm animating this. This is a Godzilla Lego model designed by the folks at Brick 101. If I had this model in front of me, it would just disappear into gray nothingness. But you know Dave Pickett as the co-author of the Lego Animation book. He and his friend Mark Larson designed this model after tons and tons of requests came in for it through the Brick 101 YouTube channel. You may have even seen a how to build video on this very model. But they also submitted it to Lego Ideas, and that's a website where you can submit a model that you create, and if it gets 10,000 votes, the Lego company considers making it into a real product. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, I absolutely have to animate this. It's got great articulation. It's kind of like a Pagano puppet in a lot of ways, just in terms of the use of ball joints. And this articulated mouth is just wonderful. So yeah, how about we animate that? So the name of this show is technically How About We Animate That, and with that in mind, I'm going to bring guests on to help me animate from time to time. Today my guest is Christopher Gearhart, who you may know for the YouTube channel Bricks Brought to Life. And you also have a new tutorial series that's coming out?
Yeah, it's called The Ultimate Lego Animation Guide. I'm going to be covering kind of the basics of animation, everything you've probably heard before, and then moving on to some intermediate and even some advanced animation tips that I've been learning as I work for the Lego Group and others doing commissions. So I'll be releasing it one episode every week for the next 4 weeks.
Sweet. If there's one thing we like here, it's learning how to animate. And with that in mind, let's get started with this Lego Ideas Godzilla.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what is happening in this first shot?
Yeah, so our idea is we have this police guy kind of, whoa, what's happening as the building is shaking, and then as Godzilla stomps in, we kind of pull wide, and Godzilla enters the frame, kind of stomps around, maybe knocks the building off this part off the top, and then Godzilla tail starts to light up with these pieces, and then spouts flames, and then kind of turns towards the camera, and the camera is filled with those flames. That's our idea.
Gotcha. So really, even though there's three things, this is still all one shot, right? In your mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we animate the zoom.
Got it. Okay, this is going to be very intense. Have you animated these like microfigs before?
I never have. It's a lot of fun. Giving them kind of like a personality without having any of the articulation.
Yeah. All right, so now that the policeman has looked around a bit, the building's going to start to shake. What do you want the order to be? Should I move the building first and then move the policeman?
I think, yeah, you should move the building first because I want the policeman to kind of rock the opposite direction of the building.
Got it. In some ways, the policeman is almost an extension of the building because how the building moves affects how the policeman reacts.
Yep. Since this figure is so small, I really want him to go over the top with his expressions and his movements. So I really wanted him to have his arms up like this, like he's flying around, but I can't do that, so this is the next best thing.
And then while the building is moving, I'm turning this crank here to kind of tilt the camera. Anytime there's multiple things happening on screen, it helps to have an order. In this case, it's helpful that you're doing the camera zoom out, but I'm trying to keep to like a constant order of what's happening in the background. So it's like move building first, then move Godzilla, and then take the picture. Move building again, move Godzilla, then take the picture. Because otherwise you may forget what you're doing or you miss a step, and then if you're like me, you only realize it 30 frames later in the animation. The other thing is, like, I'm trying to think about where Godzilla is. So at the start pose for Godzilla, it's kind of like in mid-walk already, but Godzilla's arms never really, it's not like Godzilla doesn't like walk like this, it's more like constantly like, almost like Frankenstein a little bit. Sorry, Frankenstein's monster. We're about at frame 50 or so, and the camera move is done, and Godzilla's just lumbering on into the scene, and as soon as the foot plants all the way, the camera will shake again. And then in addition to the wide kind of like stance of Godzilla's walk, I'm also trying to think about like when feet are planting and having kind of like the weight shift of like a giant creature. And keeping it so that like wherever the planted foot is, the body kind of follows it. So hopefully that comes across.
You know what would be really funny? If like when Godzilla walks up and like knocks the building over, if like the building comes off and the police guy is just kind of standing there, he's just like, oh no, and then runs away.
Yeah.
I like that.
I support this. All right, so we've got Godzilla winding up and anticipating this building swatting, and what I'm gonna do is flip the fingers around so that they're kind of like almost smearing as the speed of the attack happens.
So we're replacing these fingers with much longer fingers to get the idea that it's like a motion blur. So with big old pieces like this, can't lose it.
Godzilla looks like he's about to deliver some pained soliloquy. Oh, from whence did this building arise? And why is it in my path? Verily.
So every frame of the building is getting smaller and smaller. We're just shrinking the little model. This was last frame. And that gives it like a forced perspective of like the building shrinking off into the distance, and then our idea is to have like a little star kind of like pop up. Here are the 3 frames of the star explosion. This one right here is blue because we've got a blue background, so when we put it against the blue background, it's gonna hopefully just disappear.
To escape Godzilla, this policeman is throwing a ladder off the side of the building. Meanwhile, Godzilla's tail and back spines are glowing blue to indicate the charging of the atomic breath.
So here we're just trying to completely fill the screen with blue translucent bricks like this. Just kind of overwhelm the lens because Godzilla is shooting fire right directly at the lens. Here we've got a handy little do-it-yourself trick. I'm just using my iPhone light to give the blue fire some shine on the edges, and then also a light we had laying around just kind of brightens the whole thing up and fills the screen with blinding light.
Before we check out the final animation, I just want to thank Christopher for animating with me today. Where can people, if they are interested in seeing more of your work, where should they go?
Yeah, you can go to my YouTube channel, Bricks Brought to Life. You can find it at youtube.com/c/BBL Animation.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks again.
Thanks.
And now we're going to cut to me, but in a different location. Animation is complete, and this definitely clocks in at the longest How About We Animate That shot to date. But let's take a look at the final animation. You know, I'll be honest, when I made the decision to animate the LEGO Ideas Godzilla, I didn't really know what Godzilla was gonna do. I knew I wanted my animation to kind of evoke that man in a suit kind of idea. Like I wanted you to feel like there was a person inside this making the decisions based on being in a giant rubber suit and kind of not being able to see what they were doing. But in terms of the rest of this, you know, anytime you collaborate with someone, you get twice as many ideas. And in this case, I was just on the same page as Christopher for a lot of it. He had ideas for very specific things that I kind of went with, and I had very specific ideas that he kind of went with. And we just sort of like found a good groove in terms of melding our 2 animation styles together. There's definitely stuff in here that's very me in terms of animation. Obviously, animating something that looks like a Pagano puppet is very me, believe it or not. But at the same time, that ladder bit where the little micro policeman rolls down the ladder and escapes down the side of the building, that's not something I would have thought to animate. Putting pieces together with blue tack, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just not my style. But having someone else whose style it was made this animation a lot richer. The other cool thing was that because we were 2 people, it was also easier to kind of trade off on the animation. So sometimes I would animate the policeman, or sometimes Christopher would. Sometimes I would animate Godzilla, or sometimes he would. We kind of went back and forth, not really depending on anything other than who had the idea of what to do next, and also where were we standing in terms of our relationship to the tabletop. Because sometimes it just becomes easier for one person to do something if they are conveniently close to it. So when Christopher was closer to a certain part of the animation, he would kind of take it over for a bit. If I was closer, I would take it over. It was a really nice give and take to have with someone that I've never animated with before. Overall, there's just a lot going on in this shot. I think it came out great, and it wouldn't have been possible without 2 brains working at once. So that's the Brick 101 Godzilla model. And special thanks to our friend Dave Pickett for sending this to us. If you'd like to see this model as a real LEGO set, don't forget to support it at the LEGO Ideas website. Again, it needs 10,000 votes to even be considered by the LEGO group for production, so head that way and cast your vote today. I sound like this is like some sort of rally. Vote for Godzilla! Vote for Godzilla! Special thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon, and again to Christopher for joining me in this episode. And I'll see you next time for another How About We Animate That?